I said to her, I was like, I'm just so sick of feeling this way. And I'm so sick of sort of, wanting to do better and starting over and then failing, if you will, and then starting over again and continuing that cycle. And she just looked at me and she was like, so start once and don't stop again.
We are heroes and dreamers. We are restless believers.
Welcome to Empowering Vibez, the show that supports you to create an extraordinary life. My name is Hannah Wiss, and my guest today is the positive and uplifting Sammi Beatrice.
Sammi is a motivational speaker, a lifestyle coach, the host of the Fashion Your Passion podcast, and she's still in college. Sammi strives to help entrepreneurs become more productive and really let their passion shine through. Through her own personal development, she has found some of the key ways to become authentically you, living out your best life.
I am so excited and deeply grateful to have such an empowering and inspiring woman on the show today. Sammi, thank you so much for being here and welcome to Empowering Vibez.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I would like to start with your personal story, since you struggled in high school with mental illness, but then you managed to turn this pain into your purpose. So would you share with us how you went through, what you went through, and how your senior year transformed your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, it was a lot of discovery, I would say, where it was like, I didn't really know what was going on with me, and I was very, very confused through a lot of it. And I think that at one point it was like, I just started like Googling things, right? And I was like, oh, like, what are these symptoms? Like, what am I feeling? All of that. And then I came across these words like anxiety and depression and all of these different things. And so I used sort of like my educational experiences, English projects, like English class projects, and, just different things like that to sort of figure this all out. And lo and behold, I just started to resonate with those words more and more. And from there, I like dabbled in a bunch of the different treatments, if you will. So, I started to take better care of myself, and I started going to therapy and all of that. And like nothing was hitting the sweet spot at that point. And that was for like 2 years, I would say. And I rolled into my senior year of high school, and for the first like 6 months, I was like not, like I was just the same way. I was stagnant. I wasn't really enjoying my life. I wasn't living my life. I wasn't really doing anything out of the ordinary, if you will, to make me excited about getting up every day. And I went to my public speaking teacher one day, and I said to her, I was like, I'm just so sick of feeling this way, and I'm so sick of sort of, wanting to do better and starting over and then failing, if you will, and then starting over again and continuing that cycle. And she just looked at me and she was like, so start once and don't stop again, like don't fail again. And I don't know why. And for the first like 6 months, I was like not, like I was just the same way. I was stagnant. I wasn't really enjoying my life. I wasn't living my life. I wasn't really doing anything out of the ordinary, if you will, to make me excited about getting up every day. And I went to my public speaking teacher one day, and I said to her, I was like, I'm just so sick of feeling this way, and I'm so sick of sort of, wanting to do better and starting over and then failing, if you will, and then starting over again and continuing that cycle. And she just looked at me and she was like, so start once and don't stop again, like don't fail again. And I don't know why the case.
Wow. I literally got goosebumps all over my body when your teacher said like, start and never stop again. I'm getting it again. Wow. This is so, wow. Thank you so much for sharing this. And also thank you so much for being so vulnerable. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What would you say on this journey, on this whole mental health journey, discovering yourself, healing yourself? What were your biggest lessons?
Wow. I mean, I'm still learning to this day. The journey is not over. It's never going to end. From high school to now I'm in college, and, I flew across the country to go to college. So once I entered college, it was a whole new experience for me and a whole new learning curve, basically. Of like, yeah, I had some sort of like, familiarity and routine back home, but now I'm in this new space, this new time, and I need to sort of figure out that familiarity again. And so I think that the biggest thing that I've learned really is that um, you have to learn how to be vulnerable with yourself, but B, learn how to just be with yourself. I think that for so long, I tried to just limit as much time as possible as I was with myself, with my emotions, with my feelings, because I felt like they were unproductive. And I think that I've learned through all of my, you know, just different crying fits and whatnot, that the reason that those crying spells were happening was because throughout my week I would just suppress everything, right? And I would just go on, and I would go to work for 9 hours a day, and then I would come home and watch TV and do whatever, and not really have a moment in quiet until I just blew up. And so I think that was the biggest thing, but also being vulnerable yourself in the fact that you know, things change, and the way you expected things to be 5 years ago is not the way that things are gonna go out today, and be today. And being vulnerable with yourself enough to recognize that and say, hey, let's change these plans, and let's be gracious with ourselves in the fact that okay, maybe these didn't happen, but we can change the timeline a little bit so that new things can happen and they can gain you that momentum.
This is beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. We actually do have a lot of similarities in our story. I absolutely understand. So thank you so much. I'm sure this is of service to many, many, many people and listeners. Today, thankfully, you're happy and working passionately as a motivational speaker, as a life coach, and the host of the Fashion Your Passion podcast. For somebody who's listening and who is trying to find his or her passion, what advice do you have?
Yeah. I mean, my biggest thing is that I always say that, passion doesn't have to reflect in your career, reflect in your day to day. Honestly, you can live out your passion and only do it once a month. I think that for a lot of us, we're taught that, if you're not happy in your job, then you should quit and move on and whatnot. But what I've learned through, the multiple jobs that I've had these past 8 years, and all of that, is that not every job will be super fun and, all rainbows and sunshine, but each of the jobs you hold, each of the things you do, each of the, organizations you get involved with will move you to the next step, even if it's painful. And that the journey of finding your passion, the journey of doing all of that is super painful. It's not a fun process. But if I had to give tips on how to go through that process, I think that my number one starting point would be to just do a lot of exploration in the way of finding yourself, in the way of, finding something you like to do. I always give the story of my senior year math teacher. He was explaining to me, I was telling him about sort of the speech that I do about how to find your passion. And he was explaining to me that he had to get his car fixed one day, and he didn't want to pay, the mechanic all that money, because it's just a ton of money and it wasn't worth it. So he went to YouTube to figure out how to fix his car himself. And from there, he just like fell in love with cars, like how the parts of the cars, cars as a whole, all of that. And now cars is like one of his passions, all because he wanted to fix his car by himself. And so I always say that like you never know where your passions are going to stem from, and anything that you do could turn into a passion of yours. You just have to go out there and sort of not look for it, but just like live life is really what it is. I think that over my years, I've learned that, if I just sit around and focus on work all my life, then like I'm, just going to be very bored and it's going to be very soul sucking for me. But if I go out there and try to find new passions of mine, and try and just have a little fun, there's more to enjoy. And I always say that passion and joy are synonymous, and the fact that, usually following your passions and living out your passions will bring you joy.
Wonderful. Yeah. I think this is so crucial to explain and to really like be aware of, because I think, as you said, very often people think like a passion has to be my job. But then actually your passion can also be to be a mom, or to be like just to spend the best time with your family. And then you have your job just to make money and to make this passion come true in your life. So thank you so much for sharing this. It's absolutely beautiful.
Of course.
When I researched about you, I found that you have a wonderful acronym called FACT to achieve your dreams and to kind of like help us to achieve whatever we want. Would you explain what FACT means and how it can help us to get a dream life or to get whatever we want?
Yes. So FACT is the acronym that I came up with when I sort of started to figure out how I wanted to change my mindset. And this is something that was really powerful for me, I think, because for me as an overthinker, as a people pleaser, I'm kind of just like not thinking in my own head and sort of thinking about what everyone else is thinking. And so the example that I give with this acronym is it was more, obviously it's more synonymous, when I was in high school, but it's that, you studied really, really hard for a test and you ended up only getting like a 55%, right? And so the acronym goes, so it's FACT. So F is for forgiveness. So I always say, forgive yourself for what you did or for what happened, or, just how you're feeling. Because the only way you can move forward is if you can sort of, forgive yourself and realize what is happening. A is for acceptance. So it'd be like, okay, like this happened. Like I can't change it now because it happened in the past and I have to do something about it right now. So then C is change. So realize what that thing is that you need to do in order to change it. And then enact that change. And then T is for thankfulness. And this may seem really random, but I think that in all of my mindset work, the biggest thing that I had to do was be thankful, be grateful. And in this situation, specifically, a lot of that gratefulness will be just the fact that, maybe you got a better grade on the next test, or, just the fact that you were able to, accept what you did and change it and move forward because of that and succeed better because of that. Or maybe, because you got that grade on the test, you were more committed to doing your homework, a different way, and you got better grade on your homework. And so you're grateful that brought your grade up instead of this test. So the last part of it kind of got pushed to the end because just to, create it into a pretty acronym. But it sort of can go anywhere in the process.
Yeah. Yeah. Gratefulness also changed for me. Like it really changed my life, because I feel like gratefulness really does this shift from like whatever you're lacking, you shift to whatever you have. So, and I find this is why it's so powerful. And sometimes it's literally like the little things, like a good cup of tea in the morning or like a good night of sleep. And there's just always something to find that you're grateful for. And no matter how hard your time is, but that really helps you to kind of like go through these hard times, I feel. So, and to put this into an acronym, which is, so easy to remember, like fact, everybody that remembers that, is a really, really beautiful process. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was so funny because when I was creating this acronym, I was like talking to one of my friends and we were like just trying to find like synonyms for like every word. Because I was like, oh, yeah, I want to add like gratefulness to it, but like there's no good acronym to like use, like G with. So I was like, what do I do? She was like, oh, she was like, how about thankfulness? And I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. So it was
Amazing.
definitely a process to create it. But it hit home with a lot of people. So,
Absolutely. And
it's
it
worked.
sticks, The thing is, it's like we know, like we learn so much and so on. But the crucial thing is, in a situation where we actually need it, we often don't remember because we're so in our emotions. And simple things like that, like we just remember more easily. And that's why I find to find acronyms for kind of like processes is an absolute beautiful thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you already talked a little bit about how we can achieve something we want or so on. I know you're spending a lot of time and effort into helping other people to create and actively create their dream life on their terms. How can we actively create a dream life?
Yeah. So I would say that the top thing that I have sort of deducted, if you will, is that the only person you can live for is yourself. As much as you may feel a pull or an urge to, follow everyone else's wants for your life or follow everyone else's, voices going into your head, the only way that you can sort of say hell yes to everything in your life is if you do it for yourself. And it's sometimes very hard because when you grow up and you have all these voices coming into your head, teachers, parents, family saying, oh, you should go be a doctor, oh, you should go be a teacher or a pilot or whatever it is, it gets confusing and you don't know who you really are and what you really want to do. And sometimes you sort of release those voices and find out who you are and what you want to do earlier in life, and some people find it later in life, and it doesn't matter when you find it. Like, time is time, and it's you have enough time to pursue it afterwards. But it's about what are your wildest dreams? What are the things that you can think of and it gives you butterflies? You can think of and you're like, oh, I could never achieve that. I call them lofty dreams, right? I have a whole Pinterest board called My Lofty Dreams, and it's a bunch of things like, oh, like I want like, own a jet someday, and like I can't wait to like be a best-selling author, and like all these little things like that, right? And it's all the things that deep down I want to do really, really badly. And in order to live out a dream life, again, like I mentioned before, it's not going to be, like sunshine and rainbows. There's going to be a lot of work involved. And, when you go through your day to day, when you're trying to live out your dream life, you're not going to spring out of bed every morning and like be this like happy go lucky person. There are going to be days where you're, like fighting against yourself or fighting with yourself about what you want to do and what your next move is. There's going to be days where, you're so overwhelmed and you're tired and you don't want to get out of bed. But it's how you take your next step. It's what your next move is in those moments that will really set you up for your dream life. All the people who we see on Instagram and on Facebook and wherever who are super, super successful and it looks like they have everything together, don't have everything together. It's just the highlight reel that we've come to create on social media, that's what we see. But we don't see, in the background that, they just they had a fight with their kid today. Or we don't see in the background that, their business partner just backed out of their deal. We don't see all of that, and so we don't actually know the full story. The only full story we know is the one of our own, and how we can change that, and how we could make it so that we are happy with where we're going next. We're happy with where we are right now. That's also the thing. The thing about making a dream life is that it's not all about where you're going, what you want to do, what your dreams are. That's super important. But if you don't evaluate what you're doing today and what is happening today in your life, then you can't move forward. You can't go to those places. And so the present is just as important as the future.
Absolutely. This is where kind of the T for thankfulness comes in again. Because to be grateful for everything you have right now, everything you're doing, all the opportunities that are coming right now, and that just creates more of it. Beautiful. Thank you so much. How, there's is one thing to kind of figure out what your dreams are and to kind of create a big vision. But then how do we actually get the courage? I myself struggled for such a long time with, for example, starting this podcast. It was always a dream of mine. And it took so long till I finally found the courage. What would you say, what can help us to actually go the first steps?
Yes. So the final step in my How to Find Your Passion process is another fun acronym. And this one is DREAM. So it's Design, Radiant Energy, and Move. And this acronym to me is so impactful because the beginning of my journey and the beginning sort of my realization of holy shit, I need to get my life together was I was reading a book, and in the introduction, literally in the introduction, the first 5 pages, there's this line, and the author goes, "You are in control of your life." And I remember I read that line, I closed the book, and I was like, I need to get my life together. And so after I, sort of was like, okay, lofty dreams are together. They're, ready to go. They're in my head. They're tied with a bow. They're set. How do I move on? How do I move forward from there? And in that moment is when I made a plan. I said, tomorrow morning, I'm going to wake up 4:30 in the morning. I'm going to go straight to the gym. No excuses. Just go do it. Right away. And I'm going to be don't get me wrong, I was super nervous. I was 17 years old and about to step in a gym at 4:30 in the morning. Go figure, 4:30 in the morning, all these 40-year-olds would be there, right? But it's no one wants to talk to each other at 4:30 in the morning. So I just did my own thing and moved on. But I was so nervous to go. I almost backed out because I was like, what's going to happen? I'm going to make a fool of myself, all these things. But once I went for it, and then I realized everyone's doing their own thing and they don't care what you're doing. I just kept going and going and going. And it's that energy, it's that action, which is where the dreams come back into play. Because if you dreamed correctly, which sounds weird, but it's true. If you dreamed correctly, then you have an energy in you that is different than just having energy from caffeine. It's an energy that is motivating you and forcing you to do all these little things because you know that it will get you to where you want to go. And so for me, on most days, keyword most days, at 4:30 in the morning, I would spring out of bed and go to the gym because I knew if I didn't go to the gym, then the rest of my day would not be the same. And that all of the dreams that I was working towards I wouldn't be 1% more there because I didn't go to the gym that day. And That's the thing. It's like you may like people may not see it right now in their life because they haven't found that one thing or that one dream that gives them this energy. But once they find that and they feel that energy, then they'll understand like, oh, it's like, okay, boom, 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 boom. Let me start all these things, and sort of honestly, people rat on it so much, but it's like throwing spaghetti to the wall and seeing if it sticks, right? It's like, don't overthink it before you even start it, because you're not going to start it at all, or you're not going to do it the way that you really wanted it to be done. And so it's about trial and error. It's about messing up, a handful of times, even if it's a million times. It's just being able to not necessarily take risks, but just being able to be very comfortable with yourself and flexible with yourself and just do the things, right? That's like my biggest thing is like, just go after the things. Even if you don't think you're qualified, even if you don't think that you have all the right equipment, just do the things because you want to do them and for no other reason.
Yeah. Plus, those things, they stack up. So let's say you go at 4:30 in the morning, then you already have this like winning mindset, and then you perform better at your job. You like whatever you want to achieve, like that just impacts all the rest of the day. And I feel like that is also very, very powerful. And sometimes it's just like the smallest things in the morning, such as a short meditation, a little bit of gratitude, going to the gym or whatever. But just this one little consistency thing where you're saying, okay, I'll do that in the morning, just impacts and rockets like everything else throughout the day.
Yeah, it's the momentum. And it's, I don't remember where it was from, but I learned somewhere that, the more promises you keep to yourself, the larger your momentum will be, which means that like as you start going through your day, which is why they say that like making your bed first thing in the morning is so
Yes.
important, because you complete that first task and boom, you're already on a roll. You're ready to go. And just that was the biggest thing for me. I wanted to keep my momentum going because if I knew if I stopped, I would stop for a very long time. And so I immediately sprung out of bed, got to the gym, came home, made breakfast, did my, caught up on emails, did some work, got ready to go to school, went to school, was super productive in school, then went to meetings and went to work and whatnot. So it just kept going, going, and going. And I didn't stop because I didn't want to, right? And I had so many things that I want to do and so many things to work on that I was excited about it. But that's the thing, it's that momentum. Oh, you're right. Yes. Once you do little things in the morning, whatever your morning routine will look like, it impacts how you do your job. It impacts how you interact with everyone you see that day. It impacts, how much energy you have after work or after school, which impacts what you do next.
Wonderful. Talking about what you do next, I read like that you posted you worked like the last years in an agency and now you got the bravery to quit your job. Do you want to tell us what's on your plan? What's coming next?
Yes. So I I worked in a public relations agency for about 2.5 years, working to help female entrepreneurs get on podcasts. So it was kind of like the sweet spot for me where I was working in the podcast industry, but also working in the public relations industry. And so, I worked in an all female company, and it was just a dream come true. I was, I grew so much and I learned so much. But I had to take a step back because this year I sort of want to focus on finishing out college and sort of finally getting a degree, if you will. And, I hope in that time that I can, be more consistent with the podcast and continue and finish my book at some point. And I have a bunch of other things that I'm not exactly, speaking out into the universe yet, but there are major plans. And then, after college, sort of going out and speaking a lot more, and, just getting all my little passion projects done and sort of living my life. And, a big dream of mine is to travel around the world. And so I think that's sort of one of my big steps for after college.
Wow. Congratulations. This is a beautiful decision. And this is so bold. And I know the universe, like also from my personal history, I kind of did the same. Like I just quit my job and started my own company and so on. And it's like literally the universe just supports these decisions and so on. It's so beautiful, the things that just start happening. So I'm sure you will experience a lot of miracles soon.
Yes.
I myself used to struggle a long time with self-love. Basically my whole life till like a few years ago. What would you say? How can we manage, with all this, like we want to achieve our dreams, we want to achieve all these kind of things. And it's like all kind of like going forward, striving, which almost might feel like away from us, or like getting better, improving ourselves. Like, sometimes the personal development scene gets a tendency of that, which then hurts our self-love sometimes. How do we manage to like truly fully love who we are right now, but then at the same time try to get better, try to improve certain habits, try to, achieve our dreams and just become every day a better version of ourselves?
Yeah. It's not about like, oh, the person who I am right now is bad or is wrong or is anything like that. It's more about, where I'm at right now is beautiful, and where I'm at right now is where I'm supposed to be in this moment, but I don't want to stay here forever. I don't want to stay stagnant. I don't want to get comfortable. I always want to be uncomfortable. And that's how you sort of change the language of growth. For me, for the past 2 years, I've sort of stayed comfortable. I haven't really done anything recently that has sort of, given me a knot in my stomach or made me be like, should I do this? Like, is that really that's happening right now? But as I sort of recognized that, I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, this is exactly what I said I didn't want to do. And it goes back to fact, honestly. I didn't say, oh crap, like you're terrible because you did this. I was like, okay. I was like, we did that in the past. So what are we going to do next to change that? And for me, I deducted that that's living life a little bit more. And, the one thing or one of the best things that I've learned from therapy in the past 6 years is that, you can sort of not schedule in, but add a little bit of self-care time every day. It could just be a mere 10 minutes, but you can add it in every day. For me, what I do is I sort of subscribe to that 9 to 5 calendar a little bit with tweaks, but I subscribe to it. So I'll like go out all day. I'll be doing homework or doing work or whatever. And the minute I come home, if it's between the hours of 3 and 5, the minute I come home, I like don't open my laptop and I'll like put my phone on do not disturb and I'll make a cup of tea, I'll eat dinner, I'll, watch television show maybe and like relax and like debrief with myself. And just take a minute to breathe. And then I'll keep that for maybe a few hours. I would say between 3 and 5 hours, if you will. And then for me, I get up early, but I also stay up really late. So at around 9 or 10, after I've had dinner, after I've digested, after, I've watched a show or two, then I'll go back to my work. And I'll finish up a few things before tomorrow. I'll get a few more things done. And then I'll go to bed and start the day over again. And so those moments between 4 and 9, if you will, are super important to me because some days it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen every day, that routine, because, things come up. I have meetings and whatnot. But on most days, that's how it goes. And that is the one thing that has sort of saved me from kind of, just like going crazy. Because if I just focus on work all day, from the minute I wake up to the minute I go to bed, there's no room to breathe. There's no room to just be, really. And then this happens when you're about to go to bed. You want, take a breather and just be and whatever. So then you like don't get either enough sleep or good enough sleep because everything's just like racing through your brain.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, also self-care was such a game changer. It took a very, very long time till I allowed myself to take care of and now overall, I always thought kind of like, no, it's not productive, like how kind of, I thought every second needs to be productive, and that kind of like burnt me out. And now I understood, but like not only rationally, but literally like incorporated it, that these moments of self-care in the long term give you so much more energy, improve your relationships because you're not snappy or because you're not so tired that you can't do certain things or whatever. And I feel like self-care should be such one of the core priorities of all of us to kind of like truly live a healthy and happy life.
Yeah,
So
and people think it's so like cliche, but like it's not. It's become cliche because so many people talk about it, and so many people sort of like kind of just have this like picture perfect way of executing it. And like I always felt that way too, which is why I sort of never engaged in it. But until I realized that there's more to self-care than just a picture perfect way. Like
yeah.
my self-care is like actually eating dinner. My self-care is like, stepping away from my laptop for 3 to 5 hours every day. Like that is just so it looks different for everyone, and it's not something to like, I guess, be ashamed of, if you will, because it's not like you're joining in on the cliche. It's just you taking care of yourself, you nourishing yourself, you allowing yourself to prepare for your next day's work.
Yeah. And only if you do that, you actually have the energy and the vitality and the health and also the mental health to achieve your dreams and everything you want to achieve. And, there's
Exactly.
no glory in if you achieve everything, but then actually you just feel tired, fatigued, and burnt out. So I think like this conversation about self-care should become way, 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 way more even because it's so needed in our society, which just embraces the male energy, such as like doing, doing, doing. And as you said, like the time that you lay down on the couch, allow yourself to relax and so on. These times are also so needed for creativity, for example. Creativity can only come in a break and so on. And like traits like that, I feel like they lost kind of like importance. And I feel it's very, very crucial for us to bring the importance of those things back.
Yeah. Like, honestly, for me, like, I record my best solo podcast episodes when, like, in the unexpected moment. Like,
Yeah.
when I'm not, when I don't plan on recording them. Because when I'm just relaxing, when I'm just, sort of doing my own thing, those are when all of like my creative thoughts come in, right? And that's when it sort of is like, okay, like let me talk about this in the podcast now, and I can rant about something for 30 minutes. So I've learned to like not plan those things out and just let it happen, but also like not like get upset with myself like if I don't have like a creative moment every week, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not going to happen every day. It's not going to happen every week. It comes and goes. People have ruts. It's a thing that still happens. But just recognizing with myself that my best creativity will flourish if I give myself the space to let it.
Beautiful. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Jeez.
I know.
Yeah. Definitely in my top is, the piece of advice that my public speaking teacher gave me, because it changed the trajectory of my life, which was, why not just start and never stop? Another huge piece is, like I mentioned before in the book that I read, you are in control of your life. But I think that the most impactful piece of advice that I've ever gotten is, I've deducted it myself, but it was through a lot of years in therapy, and that is just live your life for yourself and no one but yourself. And if you don't know what that looks like and what that life looks like, take a step back from everyone. Literally go and stay in a cabin in the woods for a few days with no cell service, and just sit with yourself and ask yourself, if I were to take away every dream that I am doing currently for other people, who am I, and what exactly do I want to do with the rest of my life? And sometimes that's super scary, because you're like, you've lived your whole life already for everyone else, and so you're going to have to change everything about your life. But when you realize that the things you're doing now have always been setting you up for that, then you'll see that it's not as scary as you thought it was going to be.
Thank you. Yeah. I usually have a question that I ask all my guests, which is like, let's say you can turn back the hands of time and you meet your 18-year-old self and you can share like 3 wisdoms with her. Would those be the advices you would give to her? Or would you, since it's yourself and not just kind of like advice you received, be something different in that case?
I mean, 18 wasn't that long ago, so, but I think it would be different than what I said, because, as much as I would love to, as much as I give myself that advice, where I was at 18, I wasn't going to understand that, and I wasn't going to, sort of see that through. Mm-hmm. And I think that if at 18, if I were to say something to her, I think that the biggest thing that I would say is that, you are in this with yourself. Like, no one else is going to sort of hold your hand through this. No one else is going to follow you by your side through every little thing except for yourself. And you need to learn how to live with that, because the only way you're going to succeed and be open to everyone else who is coming into your life as you move cross country is going to be if you're open to it.
Beautiful. Such bombs of wisdom, I swear. But especially the fact, like, that will stay with me for a long, long time. It's beautiful. Regarding my last question, for somebody who would like to listen to your podcast, who would like to connect with you, follow you, like, where can we find you?
Absolutely. So on Instagram, it's Sammi Beatrice and Fashion Your Passion. So that's fashion, the letters UR passion. On where else am I? You can find everything and all the links at my website, which is sammibeatrice.com. And then Fashion Your Passion podcast is on every podcast platform. And we post new episodes starting on Monday, every Monday. And I think that's everywhere where I'm at.
I will link it all in the show notes so people can directly find the links. And to you, I just want to say thank you. I find it so inspiring that in such young age, you just have such an inspiring mindset already. You're empowering others. It's really so beautiful to watch like such a young generation already do that. So I really admire that. And I just want to thank you for this beautiful conversation and for you to just so vulnerably sharing. I'm Austrian, just so you know, sharing your story with us. And just thank you so much for the time you were here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure.
Now I would like to know from you, what was the one thing that you learned today and how can you put it into action starting now? Leave a comment below or hop over to Instagram at Empowering Vibez and leave a comment under the post of today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this served you. I'm sending you a huge hug and so much love. And never forget to shine your light.